Now, to continue our talks, I would like to welcome Dimitris Perdikou, who's Chief Engineer for the whole of the UK government, to share his perspectives on FinOps.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Dimitris Perdikou. I'm the Government Chief Engineer. I'm going to start off telling you a little bit about myself and then move on to talk about what we're doing across the UK government. So I've spent more than 10 years now working in IT. I started working in the private sector consultancy and now work on the government side. I worked on a global on-premise infrastructure, so I remember flying out to Germany to get some servers racked up and then off to India to work with our development teams, and then quickly shifted over to the cloud. I've done lots of work in the cloud. I was one of the ones with a hand up earlier with over 7 years. What I haven't put on here is I've also got 2 young kids at home, one of which asked me this morning, what happens if something goes wrong during my presentation? So I'm waiting for it to go wrong now. So what is my role? So I've recently moved from the Home Office into the Centre of Digital Government, and I'm looking at engineering across the whole of the public sector, whether that's a big department, a small department, local councils, all parts of the public sector. I've got 4 main teams. I've got a cloud and platforms team that's looking at how we use cloud across the public sector, how we build platforms, how we make good use of the cloud. Digital workplace. So this is about how we collaborate and all the devices that we build. This also has a big FinOps focus. If you think about buying a laptop, there's a big cost associated with that. How can we do that more effectively across the public sector? Of course, AI, everyone's already mentioned AI already. Thinking about AI in FinOps, AI tools, building our own AI models, building our own AI data center, using AI within FinOps recommendations. And finally, engineering excellence. So my focus is on how do you build good quality digital products. But that, of course, has a FinOps focus on it. When you deploy a piece of code, you might be using an AI coding assistant. You could ask that coding assistant, how do I improve the performance and save some money when I deploy it to the cloud? So what are the key initiatives that we're doing in the FinOps space? So the first one is we've been building out the FinOps community. There is an absolutely excellent community that's already been building over the last few years all across government, but we're really trying to elevate that community and expand it. We recently relaunched the community with more than 50 people across the public sector, from huge departments like Home Office and HMRC to much smaller organisations like Royal Mail and airports groups and other parts of government. So one of the great things about my current role is I get to see all kinds of the public sector. I found stuff that I never even knew of before. ONS actually publishes a report based on all the areas of public sector, and there are more than 15,000 bodies that make up public sector. Now, we're never going to reach everyone there, but bringing just 50 of them together, if we can grow that a little bit more, we can start having a bigger influence across the public sector. What else are we doing? So we've started using Focus. So I mentioned earlier my journey on FinOps. I've been on the journey of FinOps for a while. When I tried to do this 7 years ago and tried to collate my cloud data from one cloud provider and another provider and then break it down within our Kubernetes cluster, we spent more time trying to deal with that, wrangle that data, perform an ETL process to get all the information together than we did actually making any meaningful difference. Well, that's all changing now with the FinOps framework. We're currently building out a centralized cost dashboard across the public sector and pulling in the data from lots of different parts of public sector. Once we find the right person within the department, we've now got it down to less than an hour to collect that data and input it into our dashboards. That's an amazing amount of time. I can only see it growing going forwards. And I'm also looking forward to seeing that change over time with the addition of SaaS providers as well and licensing costs. We're also looking to build out a cloud strategy. We've had the cloud-first strategy in government for over 12 years now. I've just done a blog about this. But that's changing. The way people are using cloud is changing. The way they're using the services in cloud is changing. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And we're also maturing our cloud usage. People are going through a big shift. We haven't got everyone to the cloud yet, but those that were early adopters of the cloud are now reinventing how they're using the cloud. Some of them lifted and shifted and just moved to virtual servers. Some of them included containers and now looking to move off containers onto other higher tier services. So, what are the key priorities? So I nicked this out of the FinOps report. This was the key priorities from the last 12 months, but there's a lot of interesting things in there about what we're looking to do over the next 12 months. So the first thing we're looking to do is look at the FinOps governance. The biggest thing that I've found is if you get the right governance and senior stakeholder buy-in, you'll have a good success story. The success stories I see across government is when one of the senior directors, either within digital or within finance, looks at their estate and has a desire to change, it will happen. So if you get that right, other things will follow. Next is workload optimization. So if you look at the current estate and watch, and I'm sure most of you watch the news, there's no new money to be found in government. So what we're going to do, try and save some money. There's lots of quick wins out there that we can get through workload optimization. Now, I'm always battling this a little bit because I'd like, as an engineer, like to get to the perfect solution and perfectly optimize everything we do, but there's also big opportunities to get some quick wins in there and optimize what workloads that we've got deployed. Third is the cost beyond public cloud. So it's been amazing that I recently found out just a few weeks ago, if we start pulling data in from Azure subscription, we'll also get the data from Office 365. This is another massive expenditure for us in the cloud and what we're utilizing. The more vendors that bring on the focus framework, the easier it will be for us to look at our cost, optimize our costs, and ensure that the money we're spending, which is your taxpayer money, is spent as effectively as possible. The last one that I really want to draw out that I think is going to be a big focus going forwards is the carbon report and the sustainability angle. We heard a little bit about it before, and it was great to see some other organizations like Booking.com already started talking about how they're utilizing it and what their carbon footprint. This is going to be a bigger thing going forwards. And there's two big takeaways from this part of it. There's the how you do it. There's a lot of parallels between what people have been doing in FinOps now for 7-10 years and how we're going to do sustainability. Collect the data, ensure you understand the data, and then look at initiatives to drive that down. Rather than talking about driving costs down, we'll be talking about driving carbon down or driving water usage down. The same principles apply. So the battle we have in FinOps, having started in cloud a number of years ago, it was relatively simple in the early days. Might not have seemed it back then, but it felt relatively simple. You utilized cloud, you deployed a load of servers, and FinOps came along, optimized those servers. That's all changing now. We brought on containers, we brought on serverless, we brought on SaaS providers, integrated with multiple clouds, and obviously embedded AI in there as well. So we need to think about how we grow FinOps to adapt to those changing architectural trends. I really see this changing. We've got a big problem within digital and data, and there's not enough people for what we want to do. Keir Starmer stepped up a few weeks ago and said he will change the civil service from 5% of digital and data professionals to 10%. Doing that's going to be really hard. What he really wants to get out is more value from digital and data. And the way we do that is move up to higher tier services, whether it's deploying something on serverless or making use of the latest AI tool. So we need to think about that as we start looking at FinOps and how we optimize, because how we optimize is going to change drastically based on what the pricing model. If you're looking at a Lambda function, you need to think less about number of servers and total runtime, because there's no need to shut it down overnight, but actually how you use the performance improvements. If we're looking at AI coding assistants, because we're running a number of coding assistant trials across government, is how are you thinking about asking that, how do I make performance improvement in my code? If you're looking at an AI tool, is it charging you per token? By queries or what it's using? Are you deploying your own models? Are you going to tweak your own LLM? Lots of avid pricing models coming up within the AI space that we need to start thinking about how we financially optimize going forwards. Lastly, we're still migrating lots of our legacy estate into the cloud. So we published the State of Digital Government report earlier this year, which estimated that approximately 60% of UK public sector services that will be moved to the cloud have been moved. So there's still 40% to move. As part of that 40%, I'm on a mission to look at how they're designing that migration to the cloud and factoring in FinOps from the start. As mentioned earlier, once you've done it, it's a lot harder to change it a few years down the line. So if I can get organizations to be thinking about how they migrate that legacy infrastructure to the cloud from the start, it'll be much easier. I think there's a lot of parallels here with private sector as well. Large organizations, particularly large financial sector, have lots of the same legacy problems that government has. So what can we learn from each other? So I'd love to talk to some of you during the break to understand what problems you're facing or how you've solved some of those problems already and how we can embed that within the public sector. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about how we're going to grow the FinOps community within government. We're going to have a number of working groups. I talked earlier about how we've grown the FinOps community in government. We've also recently launched the cloud architecture and engineering community. Now, they're going to be looking about how you engineer and design things in the cloud, but a big part of that is going to be FinOps within that journey. Next, we're looking at the skills framework. So we have a standard digital and data skills framework within government. We look at how you define what an engineer is, an architect is, a tester, and so on. At the moment, we don't have any FinOps specialisms in there. We heard earlier that it's everyone's job to do FinOps. Well, it's great, so let's go and educate everyone. But I think there's also a place to have dedicated FinOps roles. I know a number of your organizations have that as well. And I'm exploring what that might look like. Do we need a FinOps specialist, FinOps governance person, something else? If you've already done this organization, it'd be great to talk to you later about what you've done and what you see as dedicated FinOps roles. But expect to see some dedicated FinOps roles coming out in the government in the future. So I mentioned earlier, we're trying to pull in senior leaders and educate them. There's still much of the civil service that have never even heard of the word FinOps, so we've still got a long way to go. So we're looking to educate across both digital professionals, but also wider financial professionals, permanent secretaries and ministers. The last thing we're doing is building our centralized dashboards and also negotiating our contracts. I spoke earlier about collating all that billing data into one place. Well, the next step of that is building some central dashboards. If I can get the data in an hour, I can get a standard dashboard out in maybe a few more hours. I can sit down with an organization, I can explain the spend to them at all levels of the organization, whether it's a permanent secretary about what they're spending their money on, or an engineer on the ground building something who didn't know what the cost was associated with building them. Lastly, I'm not sure if you're aware, we negotiate with our cloud providers centrally in government. We do that every few years. But at the moment, it's really hard to get that data about what we're using now, what trends we're using. Are we seeing people move from one cloud provider to another, or off virtual servers onto containers, or utilizing new AI technologies? The more data we have to hand, the easier it will be us for negotiating the next round of contracts with those cloud providers. Of course, I couldn't get through without mentioning quite a bit on AI, so I've got a dedicated AI slide. Both talking about AI for FinOps and FinOps for AI. I already see it on both sides of the fence. So I'm already starting to see tools come up in the market about how you utilizing their AI tools to tell you what to do and what's best practice for FinOps. It's so much easier if you could embed it in an LLM or into your engineer Slack channel to say, tell me what I can do to improve how much we spend for this service. Also seeing it in smart budgeting as well. Lots of budgets are trying to do forecasting. It was great to hear earlier about people improving their forecast. Well, it's great to use AI to predict budgeting on that front as well. So to finish off, thinking about the challenges and opportunities that we can get out of from this community. So one of the things that working where I am now is looking across the public sector in both big organizations and small organizations. So we've got quite a unique perspective, but also think there's a lot we can share. What we're doing here in public sector is the same for private sector. Whether you're a big organization in the private sector would relate more similarly to, say, a Home Office or HMRC, or if you're a small organization, would relate to a small arm-length body, or some of the charities that run through government, or your local council as well. So how do you make that work? I'm really struggling at the moment to know how you can make one community and one centre of excellence work with all those different types of organisations. If you've got a similar challenge or you found a way to overcome it, then I'd love to talk to you more during the break. Budgets is still a big thing. I remember first moving to the cloud and everyone's focused on budgets and how much it will cost. It doesn't feel like that's really been mastered yet because there's so much variance in the spend. We talked earlier in the journey, we used to get hourly spend. We now have per second spend, and we've got services scaling up and suddenly costing you loads more than you initially predicted, but then people cost avoiding and the cost coming back down again. So we're looking at the moment at how we look at CapEx and OpEx across our services and how we help financial offices try and predict what will come. But it only comes through working across the whole community, the financial offices and the engineers and the architects. And it's something I also see a big parallel with public sector. We're currently going through the spending review process to try and predict our spend over the next 3 years, all the way out to 2029. And quite honestly, I have no idea what we'll be spending in 2029. If I look back 3 years and think where we are now, I couldn't have predicted half of it. I couldn't predict some of the services that would have changed, the IA capabilities, all the new services that the government's looked for us to deploy. It's great to be part of a community of like-minded professionals. So that's it for me, but it'd be great to talk. If you're from the public sector, we've got a dedicated breakout at 12:30 later today, so come along to that. And if you're private sector, then let's join up, share best practice, and you can see how you can help government save money for the taxpayer. Thank you very much.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. I hope you enjoy this video as much as I enjoy sharing all of these amazing FinOps stories, best practices, and expertise. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, click the notification bell, and leave comments and questions for our speakers. Check out more FinOps content on our YouTube channel. We appreciate the support.